Okay, that fell down. I don't know why, but we're going to continue taping. So Pam is definitely very low differentiated. She has a very high pseudo self, a very low core self. She can't really name what her interests are. She has a hard time naming even the hours that she works a week without the aid of her parents' input or the therapist even. She's definitely the most uncomfortable when they focus on her instead of her role in the family system or her parents. She continually kind of self-sacrifices herself. This is almost a little contextual. She has some invisible loyalties, particularly to her dad, to keeping the family equilibrium. She sacrifices, kind of scapegoats herself, certainly, to have the focus be on her. But when it is on her in a positive light and understanding what she's like, what she enjoys, she physically turns off from it. We see her wrestling around with her hands, kind of going inside her sweatshirt. Her eyes are kind of moving around the room. She's very visibly upset by it. And we see the therapist having to continually check in if she's okay and she's okay to talk about this matter. At 2:34, yeah. So the therapist asks her, hypothetical, if you were to win the lottery, what would you do if you could move into a condo all by yourself? She jokes, but she's pretty serious in saying, let's go, guys. She'd take her parents with her. As much as there's conflict in the family, she would quickly take them with her wherever she went. So at this point, Dad and Pam are kind of joking adoringly and laughing together, whereas if you look at Mom, she looks incredibly uncomfortable. So in this moment, I think what she's thinking is more so that she's on the outside of a triangle here. Obviously not consciously, but she's on the outside of this relationship, and there's never going to be space for her. This is not typically, the way they talk about at, 2:38, they talk about how when they're all very emotional and upset about something, they kind of go off into their own boxes. They don't engage too much with one another. So they're very low. They have a very low differentiation as a family system as well, because the fear there seems to be, if we do engage with one another when we're so vulnerable, when we're so upset, then the emotional reactivity might be too much, that it's easier to go off on our own, to not connect, than it would be if we were to connect, to choose to do that. It would just heighten the anxiety, which, we don't really talk about emotional cutoff here. They don't really make much note to emotional cutoffs in the family, but that itself serves, and what usually perpetuates emotional cutoff is the fear of heightened anxiety. It's easier to go outside of it than to go into it. So they are very fused in that way. Triangles, that's a huge theme from Bowen here in this session. So what I'm able to identify are two very major triangles, at least. That between the parents and Pam, where Pam kind of serves to be the buffer, to take away some of the anxiety within the parent relationship, within, the disappointment and the gender roles, within the lack of communication and connection. But then there's another big one that's between, Pam and her father's closeness, where her mother is on the outskirts, and any emotionality that comes up between the two of them, Pam and her father, really is indicative of the anxiety between the parents and the lack of communication and connection between them. So Dad voices he tries to push them together, but it's clear that Pam looks at him for, what's okay. He's the parameter in the family for her. So if he were to model a healthier connection between him and his wife, I believe that Pam would probably follow suit. Dad's history of drinking also, my big hunch here is that before Pam was old enough to serve in the triangle and to be the outsider, to kind of calm the anxieties within the emotional field, that for him alcohol served that purpose. And at 2:05, yes, they're talking about a previous session in which Dad got very, very angry. Pam notes that when she saw him getting angry, she almost stood up and said, hey, we're here for me, don't focus on Dad. And he encourages this. He encourages this, triangulation that she's certainly assumed in the family, and says, why didn't you stand up? What stopped you? So they're all very comfortable with this triangle, as typically is in an equilibrium or a triangle in a family system. People are comfortable in it for a reason. It serves a purpose. And any change to that, I would say, would have to probably start with mom, because she is more so differentiated and less so fused in that relationship and in that system. Even, the smaller subsystems in the family. The family projection process, again, we didn't talk too much into past generations, but we talk about, in terms of perpetuating anxiety at 227, Garen asks if they ever kind of light a fire under Pam's butt to get her kind of going out in the world, to try new things, to meet new people. And they say no. I think that they're comfortable with where she is, with where they are as a family, even if they would say, that there's a problem, they're obviously in therapy for a reason, there's something to work on, it definitely serves a purpose, and it will take a long time before they're able to understand at any level the purpose of that triangle and to rework family relationships and communications around the anxiety that's being served by that triangulation. Again, emotional cutoff, we didn't really so much overtly talk about, but I think that the way that they communicate serves for what might lead into emotional cutoff. I don't know that I see that happening in their family, but possibly it has in the past. Maybe that's why they kind of steer away from talking about extended family so far. Maybe there's some major cutoffs between siblings or something. In terms of sibling position, for Pam, she's assumed the role as the functional only child because of the death in the family. I don't necessarily think that she has assumed wholly what's typically the only child sentiment, but she definitely, is very involved with she's an adult, but the more adult figure, she's definitely involved in the family dysfunction and family matters. So she kind of serves to cover all bases within the family, not necessarily because she is an only child or because of the adoption or anything, but because of the loss of her brother. And for Dad, I wonder mostly about his sibling position, especially in terms of the gendered messages that he's received. My guess is that maybe he is the only boy of all girls, possibly even the youngest. He seems to have been given a pretty strong message about what a good woman or a good girl is supposed to fulfill in terms of their roles in the family and their responsibilities, and that he has a very clear message of what a man is supposed to do or what a man is supposed to not do or be. So yeah, it would be interesting for me to hear about, what their sibling positions are if we were to have more time with them. But that's pretty much it. Again, I hope this recorded, but that's my first parter of the final assignment. Thank you.